Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Long Island Sound. I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing Ray Lambiase. He's been a singer-songwriter here on Long Island for decades. He takes us back to the Greenwich Village days, and he talks about his heroes who he's opened up for. I think you'll be surprised. Also, I have a special song that Ray played for us at the very end of this episode, and it's dedicated to springtime and the baseball fans that are out there, especially you Yankee fans. Hey, let's get to it. Yeah, I've been going over your bio and your music. I really do enjoy it. It looks to me, just first blush, you've got 1,000 stories to tell me.
I do.
So let's just talk about what's happening lately with your music, what the latest music you have out and where you're going, and then we'll turn the pages back and talk about the very beginning of how you figured out you could do this.
Sure. Well, the last full-length CD that I released was it was called The Road Ahead, and that was a mix of full band material and some stripped down acoustic material. It was actually my 5th CD, and when I'm starting a CD, I usually try to come up with a concept.
Okay.
I've had full band CDs, and I've had CDs that were more story oriented.
Okay.
And The Road Ahead was kind of a mix of them all. The Ballad of Three Finger Brown was an all acoustic album, for instance, and then Kid Bayonne after that was an all band album. And then the next one, The Road Ahead, was a little mix of each. And nice. We're actually working on another album now, which is very, very stripped down, very, very acoustic. I'm kind of like trying to go back to my roots of my earliest influences. And there's a handful of songs on it that are historical by nature, and some kind of I never stick completely to the concept that I start recording an album with, but it gives me like a framework that gives me a place to start, and it kind of contains the material. It kind of puts songs that belong together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so by setting up that framework, are you kind of helping guide the muse as things come to you? That's my first question. And the second question, would you consider yourself a sole practitioner in writing your songs, or do you collaborate? How does the process work?
I've never had the opportunity to write with someone else. I would kind of like to do that, but it hasn't happened. It's not something I'm adverse to, but I've just been writing for so long. I've been writing since I was like 16 years old, and so it's just taken on a life of its own, kind of.
Yeah, I would think, if those, and we were talking about Mike Nugent before we really kicked off. Mike collaborates with a guy in Colombia, an expatriate, and he writes all the lyrics, and Mike puts it together. But I would imagine it's really a relationship thing, a chemistry thing, and to embark on that off the bat, it's like riding a different type of bicycle, I guess.
I'm pretty sure I'd have written a lot more songs if I did that, and because I'll labor over a lot of songs. But I will mention one thing that kind of addresses that sort of chemistry that you're talking about.
Sure.
It's not about songwriting, but there's a moral to this story. During the pandemic, I sat down and played a song live into the camera. Just one take, the guitar and vocal, and I sent it to a bunch of friends, and my niece, a bunch of friends and my niece, and they all sent me back videotapes of them playing their parts with, of course, the audio recording of their parts.
Okay.
And it was just lightning in a bottle. That so much so that when we started working on The Road Ahead, I went about trying to re-record it. And Kevin Kelly and I, who's a musical partner, engineer, producer, friend for 40-something years, we realized that whatever the technical limitations were of the recording that was done remotely during the pandemic, the magic that was on the recording, we'd never be able to replicate. So that song is on the record. Even though it was recorded in the most primitive of fashions, of course, Kevin Kelly is able to do certain works of magic. Yeah. But it just really was just, we spend so much time in the studio reproducing, trying to play the same parts over and over again, trying to get them perfect, singing the vocals like 5, 6, 7 times. And this was just one take, live, guitar and vocal. And once everybody piled on, it had a certain magic to it that you can't reproduce sometimes.
It's interesting, the dynamic of, and I saw a lot of these collaborative cover songs where they'd have people all over the world playing. I thought that was so interesting. I saw the dynamic in speaking to different artists of being trapped at home and just, I need to play, I need to play for someone, and what that can produce. I remember seeing a documentary on Bruce Springsteen and his early days in the studio. I mean, they were trying so hard. They said it was so difficult to try to recreate that live sound of their live show in the studio. And they labored for weeks to do that, and it's just a different dynamic. It's amazing.
And that can work too. But it does just speak to what's really important with music. It's not the engineering perfection or even the performance perfection. If you're trying to write material that's intended to touch people and communicate with people, a lot of times it's pretty hard to put your finger on exactly what works, and Hank Williams would have said it was just, honesty and simplicity and sincerity. And it's tough to disagree with that.
Yeah, it's, the search for the mojo of the song where it connects with people. I've always been amazed, and I've said this to other people. I said, what I love about singer-songwriters and people who write and play and perform music is you're able to articulate things for me through your music that well up emotions that I might never be able to recreate or do on my own. But that's the enjoyment. When you can take me to another place, when you can draw me in as if I'm literally in your living room, and you're only playing to me, that's the magic of music. That's why I cherish going to see people live. There's that. Not only that they're singing to me, but it's almost like going, kind of pontificating. It's almost like when you can watch a movie at home on Netflix, and I do miss this, yet go to that communal experience of going to the theater to see a performance. And what is it that just other people enjoying that I'm enjoying as well? What is that? What does that energy bring? It's interesting about that. Hey, Reed, let me ask you this. You touched on it a little bit. Tell me about, I'm always curious, when did you pick up the instrument, and who were your influences to say, I want to be like him or her?
Right. Well, I originally played the piano, and I was so driven as a young kid that we didn't have a piano at the time. So I kept going over to my neighbor's house, and I taught myself to play the piano on my neighbor's piano. And so, my mother picked up on that one and eventually got me a piano. And then she got me a guitar for Christmas a little later on. And my earliest influences was basically folk music. And a lot a lot of that had to do with my older brother, who had folk records by Joan Baez and Odetta and early Ray Charles albums, and all my friends were listening to the Beatles and the Who, and I was running out buying records by Mississippi John Hurt and
Right.
Mississippi Fred McDowell and Brownie Terry and Sonny McGee, and but Dylan, of course, was a tremendous influence, and in the early stages of my development, the folk singers like Tom Paxton and Gordon Lightfoot and people like that. As time went on, I became enamored of I guess what you'd call the California songwriters, Jackson Browne and
Right.
the Byrds.
The Laurel Canyon group.
Yeah, exactly. That first I'll never forget that first Crosby, Stills and Nash album. To me, it was like a revelation. And along those lines, the album Joni Mitchell's Blue, which both those records at the time, I remember thinking they'll never be better records than these two records ever made. And I think Blue has really aged to the point where a lot of people might still say that's true. Blue is on everybody's 10 best list of all time, I think.
You know what's nice? It's nice seeing that all these different genres are alive. There is at least I'm finding a very big folky community on Long Island.
Yeah.
Bringing out new music and not just doing covers of the stuff they heard in their teens, but really bringing out some great music. And I'm talking about people even in Brooklyn who play. There's a couple called the Locksmiths who do a fantastic job. And Pete Mancini,
Sure.
just kind of great stuff. And it harkens back to, man, that's the folks, right? That's the song of the people.
One thing I always say, my songwriting matured or turned a corner when I finally realized that my life wasn't as important to other people as it is to me, and I started writing songs about other people and other more traditional folk stories.
So Ray, you started out with the acoustic music. Did you kind of give up on the piano once you got that guitar from your mom, or?
No, not at all. I wrote songs on the piano. I wrote songs on the guitar, and I actually went into the recording studio in 1980, in January of 1980, and recorded a pop song that I wrote on the piano. And at the time, I was involved with the fast folk music scene in Greenwich Village, Jack Hardy and that whole gang. And that was a magic time to be a part of that group. Suzanne Vega was unknown. John Gorka was unknown. Sean Colvin was unknown.
Wow.
It was really a pretty magic time. But then after I put that song out, a song called Slow Dance Romeo, I put a band together and did, as a youngster, tried to do like sort of a pop rock, folk rock thing, which at the time wasn't that far-fetched, the success of the Eagles and all that stuff.
Sure.
But it did get me out of the folk scene for a long time. And I was a big fan of Graham Parsons as well as the Byrds, so there was a lot of sort of folk country rock influences. Not to mention, as a songwriter, a gigantic fan of Hank Williams.
Yeah, sure. So let me ask you: that wasn't your Bob Dylan moment going electric at Newport, was it?
No. It was It was a little closer to going folk rock like the Byrds, going folk, taking Dylan electric,
I gotcha. Okay.
But
So you played around New York City with the group, or what happened? Did you work
I just
on the island scene?
not much. I just hung around with those guys. We did travel a little bit together, but it was just an amazing period of time. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to either meet Jack Hardy or learn very much about him, but he was sort of a Pied Piper figure in Greenwich Village. He had an apartment that there'd be spaghetti dinners, and everybody would come and play songs.
Oh, nice.
And there were a lot of talent. There was a lot of talent involved in that group, and but eventually I went into the recording studio and moved into playing live with a band. But as I've gotten older, the older I get, like this album that we're recording right now, the older I get, the more I regress to my roots of traditional folk music. It's I'm not sure why that is, but maybe I feel a need at this point in my life for for the circle to close. But
it's interesting that you talk about that Greenwich Village communal type of people hanging out and playing music together. I mean, that if there's anything on my wish list, man, that's on my wish list to have that kind of, singing in the round, and you play two, I'll play two. Hey, you join me on this, or people jumping in on harmony. It's certainly magical, and it's something I think worth recreating if you can.
There's a bunch of open mics where that do serve to bring people together. On March 23rd, Sunday, March 23rd, Charlie Backfish from WUSB is organizing one of his shows at Stony Brook, where basically people pay tribute to different songwriters. And that brings together, that's the nicest thing about those shows. This will be at least the third one I've done. And the nicest thing about those shows is it puts us all in the same room, and everybody plays 2 or 3 songs, but we're all together, and it's a wonderful experience. It's just a great night.
So that's the Gordon Lightfoot collaboration, right?
This one is. Is it? Yeah, I can't remember. It's a Sunday, and it's a Sunday coming up in March.
Yep. In fact, I was talking to my wife about it, and she loves Gordon Lightfoot. I said, "Hey, we've got this thing going on. It's out in Stony Brook." She goes, "Oh, I'm in. Count me in." And there was another. You familiar with the Nirma group in Huntington?
Yes.
That same vibe, or and I'm just an audience member, right? And I years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I kind of lose track of time. I saw the Nirma group do this Neil Young set at the American Legion in Huntington, and I was blown away. I was like, saying, "Hey, I'm going to you're going to the American Legion to hear music. What's that going to be like?" And it was phenomenal. It was great. And then I went to the duets one that they had this past fall, and I got to interview Steve Prisco and Tom Ryan, and they were a blast. And just the music great, right? Just wonderful. But just to watch the camaraderie, I'm always keying in on what's happening on stage, how musicians talk to each other and cue each other, and it was very well organized. I mean, it's like herding cats, I can only imagine, getting all those musicians. But we left there, it was like $25 a ticket, not expensive. And I said to Debbie, my wife, I said, that was a $7,500 show. It was just that good, and I hope there are more of those opportunities for musicians. And you did speak about, it's funny being in that room together with the other artists. So many artists that I talk to, you guys, when you're out gigging, you're kind of ships passing in the night, because she's playing there, he's playing there, maybe we'll get together. The open mics are definitely key. Very interesting. I just saw, and I'm bragging about this because I went to this open mic, a guy named David March, who's the bass player for Miles to Dayton, and Cassandra House did this open mic at People's Pub out in Bayport, which is the old Grey Horse Tavern. He had 35 acts there.
Wow.
And I walked in, and I'm like, I'm not used to open mics being crowded.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was just like, it was like a little reunion. It was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
Tell me what song you're going to play for us. You're going to play live, and I'm really excited to hear you play. So what do you got on board for me? It's like my own personal show with hundreds of people listening in.
No problem. Well, I'll play something that's sort of appropriate. This is a song I wrote as kind of an homage to those early teachers of mine, Robert Johnson and Mississippi John Hurt. I got home to Mississippi late last night. You were waiting up to start a fight. I guess there ain't be no kissing. You weren't missing me. I was born to sing the blues. Baby, why you helping me? I had a little bit of business across the Georgia line. Still I made it back in record time, but it ate my peaches. Oh, you're reaching for, I see. I was born to sing the blues, so baby, why you helping me? If you were talking about going walking with some dandy on the street, well, put your head straight before it's too late and I pick up my feet. Louisiana's where I ought to go. They got a juke joint outside East Monroe. Oh, women and whiskey, a risky recipe. Yeah, I was born to sing the blues, so baby, why you helping me? If you were thinking about going drinking with some dandy on the town, well, put your money where your mouth is, honey, and don't come back around. Yeah, I'm slipping on my Monday morning shoes, heading off again to pay my dues. Yeah, when trouble hits me, it fits me to a T. I was born to sing the blues, so baby, why you helping me? Born to sing the blues, sweet mama, why you helping me? That's in the Mississippi John Hurt style. If you notice, I was playing with a pick and just using two fingers, the finger pick. Mississippi John Hurt would have played it the exact same way, except he would have done his thumb and two fingers. He never used the third finger on his right hand. Anyway, a little bit of whatever.
A little nostalgia there.
A little bit of history, guitar player, nerdy talk.
Now that's your song, right? That's your
that's my song. That was like my little homage. There's a couple of, like, there's a reference. Slipping on my Monday morning shoes is, of course, a Mississippi John Hurt. Monday Morning Blues is a Mississippi John Hurt song. And the reference to the juke joint in East Monroe is a reference to Robert Johnson's. There's a line in Dust My Broom about a girl from East Monroe.
And what's going through my mind, I'm like, I've been to Monroe, Louisiana, in my full-time job with alarm companies. So I'm like, I'm wondering, did Ray ever go there? Like, where did he get this?
Yeah. No, that was just a little bit of a little tip of the cap. I've organized a number of benefits around Christmas time.
Yep.
And it's gotten a lot of people together, and you raise some decent money. And that's always a blast. But there was one year where everybody under the sun came to my house one Sunday afternoon, and everybody played 3 songs. In groups of 3 people in groups of 3. And what was amazing is while we were streaming each group of 3 going around 3 times, I would look out in the backyard. There'd be 2 or 3 people off to the side playing together, and often off in another corner of the house, there'd be 2 or 3 people playing. And it was like one of the most magical, exhilarating days ever. But my poor wife had to work so hard that I said, I can't do that again. There was probably, there must have been like, I don't know, like 30 people here. I made a 2 CD set to give to everyone. I'll have to get you a copy of it.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
It's just everybody sitting around. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, no, it's again, we're touching on that communal spirit to get things together.
I will have to say this. I just had this conversation, and I'm trying to remember with who, either yesterday or the day before, about how liberating it is when you get to a certain age, where you realize that the only reason you're playing music is because you love to do it and you can't not do it, and you have, no ideas that, you'll ever be famous, or you'll this or that, and so you just do whatever you want, the kind of music you love, and that then translates to wanting to be around other musicians, because that's where you realize that really the magic of music is the connection between human beings. And there is something that maybe only other musicians completely understand, about what it means to you and the sacrifices that you've probably made over the course of your life for wanting to get better at music, get better at writing. So yeah, the older I get, the more important it is for me to try to surround myself with as many friends as possible.
Yeah. I've used this analogy in the past. I said, being a musician as we get older, I'm not a golfer, okay? But I can look at my friends who golf, and why do they golf? And they enjoy it. It's a lot of things about it. And that and music, those are the 2 things that you can keep playing at 90. You can still play together with your friends and have that enjoyment and have all the other intangibles that go along with it. Golf may be, I'm outdoors, I'm exercising, I'm competing against myself, which many times you are as a musician, to get better and to learn the nuances and stuff. So there's an analogy for you. All right.
Well, I'll mention one other crazy thing. My next show with my band is April 11th in Huntington at a bar called The Last Word.
Okay.
And if you were to come see me play with my band, every person on that stage with me, I've been friends with for over 50 years, 50.
Wow.
I've been playing, I graduated high school with the drummer.
Okay.
The bass player graduated with me, graduated a year later after me, and I went to college with Kate, the singer. So it's just amazing to me, really, that I get to play with people who are basically family, 50 years is a long time.
Yeah, it's... oh my God. And you're still talking to each other.
Yeah.
That's the magic right there, And it's funny when I see people who've been playing for a long time, what I kind of cue into is I'm really looking at, I'm enjoying the music, but I'm looking at their faces. Let me backtrack a little bit. I was in some church group, and there was a lot of stress in the early stages of this group, and it morphed into something really, really beautiful with some changes. And I remember people in the congregation say, "You guys don't look. How come you're not smiling?" You know, and because we're stressed, and yet now I key into that, and when I see the joy of everybody, that's where the magic is. And you know what? That radiates out through my opinion, through the playing, and through the atmosphere, and to the audience. Because if you're having fun, you've given me more permission to really enjoy what I'm listening to, what I'm saying.
Oh, without a doubt. So, but I would say really the most important thing about my own personal journey, is songwriting. You know, because I still want to get better. I want to get better forever. I always loved telling stories, and I always loved writing songs. And I always loved the idea that maybe I learned something from every song. And people, when you do interviews, inevitably the question always comes up, which comes first, the words or the music? And I always say neither. What comes first is the idea.
Yeah.
If there's not an idea that's interesting enough to write a song about, if it's not interesting enough to me, I'll never do a good job writing about it, you know.
Right.
So, and then, you know, songs come to you, they're like fingerprints. They never come to you the same way twice. They never get written the same way twice. They never take the same amount of time twice to write. They're like their own people, and I kind of love that about. I don't look at that as a bad thing. There are some songs that I've written in 2 or 3 days. I remember there was one song that I started writing one night, and I said, well, I'm just going to keep working on this song until stuff stops coming out. And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had like 90% of the song written. And then per usual, I spent another 3 weeks working on the last 10%. So,
right.
But
it's
it's
amazing. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say the process is unpredictable and never the same, like snowflakes.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that, you know, because I've asked people, you know, do you purposefully sit down and say, I'm going to write a song? Do you grab onto an idea that hits you, and then it's a good stream of ideas that you just, like, you continue with it, which I hear that more often. Rick Rubin, Neil Young said that, hey, when it catches you, take it, because you're going to be a different person if you try to, like you said, that 10% to try to come back. And as you were telling me about this, I'm thinking about the 2 things that I wrote that I was really proud of. And one time I was in Baltimore. I had seen this. I was in a black church, and it was just so different to me. It was great. The music was great. And I just told my wife, I said, hey, Deb, I know we're driving home. We had left. My daughter was doing social work in Baltimore. So my wife was crying anyway. And I said, you got to take the wheel. I said, I just got to write. It's all right. It's flowing right now. And I wrote it down, and I put an essay together, and I thought it was pretty good. And another time was a friend of mine's son got shot on Christmas Eve. He survived, but it was an amazing story that we got to hear from him a week after, he got out of the hospital. And it was so striking, this whole story that he told, that I had to write it down, and I did it in a poem, of all things. And but it was. This may sound strange. I don't know if it happens to you. You ever write something, whether it's a song or prose or anything, that you well up yourself about what you wrote? Does that sound arrogant?
Nope, not at all. That That's happened many times.
With like hair on your arm raises, or you might have a tear, or
Oh yeah,
it wells up emotion. Yeah.
And whenever it happens, I think of the line in the Steely Dan song. I cried when I wrote this song. Sue me if I play too long. Now I'm sure that's happened to me a dozen times.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm not really that crazy.
No. That's a good sign when that happens.
Yeah, I think so.
That means you're getting close to the bone on something.
Yeah.
I always said that the whole point of my job as a songwriter, like I mentioned, that I learned at some point the most important thing was to realize that my life is not that important to other people. It's maybe perhaps an aspect of my life that somebody can relate to that they can then pull into their own experiences. I always use the analogy of a dressmaker's dummy.
Okay.
You know those
yeah, sure.
molded things.
Mannequins, without the head.
My job is to form that shape, and hopefully other people can see their own fabric laid over it. And so I try to have a very structured approach to my songwriting. The songs are all very structured. And they're all, which is counter to every pop, songwriting book you've ever read. They all have a beginning, a middle, and an end, as opposed to a great first verse and a chorus, and then don't worry about the second or third verse. They all have stories, and they all come to conclusions. But I'll play another song, actually, which ties up a couple of things we've touched on. One of my songwriting heroes was Hank Williams, and I kept trying to remind myself what it was about him that made his songs so successful. They were clever, but they were sincere and they were heartfelt, and I wanted to try to write a song that maybe he might have liked. But it also ties in with what we were saying earlier about what comes first. I had the idea for this song. The idea popped into my head, and I said, that's not only a good idea, but this could maybe be a chance for me to tip my cap to old Hank. When he stops to say hello, he looks like he did years ago. A touch of gray is all that's new. And when he takes your hand, suddenly you understand he doesn't look a day over you. Now you might think that time stood still and the years have all been gone, and he's the man you always knew. He'll ask if you are well, and it isn't hard to tell he doesn't look a day over you. His voice still sounds the same. Each mention of your name, he laughs about something you used to do. And it seems like yesterday when his eyes drift far away. He doesn't look a day over you. see his smile betray the wounds time didn't heal, and the heart that still beats true. And even as he says goodbye, nothing he can do will hide. He doesn't look a day over you. He doesn't look a day over you.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Ray, for that. And the tip of a hat to Hank Williams.
I'm on the new Dylan one that's
yes.
coming out on his birthday on May 24th.
Nice.
And had a lovely time working on a song for that with my dear friend Kate Corrigan.
Nice.
We did a duet version of It Ain't Me, Babe.
Oh, great.
And very simple guitar arrangement with the bass and just a duet from one end to the other, and it came out. It was very, very pretty.
Nice. I know. Mike Nugent did a song as well.
Yeah.
And he put a little twist to how he approached it. I don't remember exactly what that twist was, but it was very unique. And I think Bill's going to let him put it out this coming month as a single, as I guess a teaser out there.
Yeah.
But I have to talk about the Hank Williams CD because it just blew me away. Bill Herman from Paradiddle Records assembled all these artists, and what struck me was, oh my God, that's a Hank Williams tune? I thought that was a Grateful Dead tune. Oh, that's it's just my ignorance. But that CD is. I have a CD. I have a crappy old car, so I have a CD player in it, and that's in the carriage on my commute into New York City, and I really enjoy it. Really brought Hank Williams back to life for me, and just like you said, sincerity, the simplicity of the music. If you can hum it and sing it, it's a Hank Williams tune. It's really kind of cool, and that's a good goal, right? As a songwriter.
Some real lessons there.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me, we were talking about songwriting. Do you remember the first song you wrote? And how old were you? How old were you when you wrote it?
I probably would have been about 16, because maybe 15. No, I would say 16, maybe 17 even, because I'll tell you where it all began.
Yeah, please.
When I was just a little bitty child, you probably remember, probably more from your own kids, how you always wanted to hear the same book read to you over and over again.
Yes.
And when I was a small child, the book that I made my mother read me over and over again was Robert Louis Stevenson's A Child's Garden of Verses.
Okay.
And so I fell in love with poetry as a small child. And I would write poems. And once I learned to play the guitar, in particular, even, I began writing. But my earliest song of any importance was a song called Jocelyn. Okay. And my friend Lanny, who has known me long enough to remember that song, is always bugging me. Oh, we should play it. And it's a little too old out there. But,
so I can't coerce you into playing it right now?
I couldn't even remember it.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
The song though that really launched what career I've had all these years that's put my name out there was a song called Slow Dance Romeo. And I recorded that at the Workshop Recording Studios with Kevin Kelly in January of 1980. And we've been fast friends ever since. and I know you must know Rory, and
Sure, yeah.
I remember
Rory was one of my first interviews, and she busted my chops because you got to get more gals on here.
yeah. Well, I remember Rory in a stroller.
Oh wow.
So, but Slow Dance Romeo, we put it out as a 45, and this was back in the day when WLAR was a big deal, and they, for whatever reason, were very supportive of that record, and that helped me a great deal for a long time. So that was sort of the first significant song, but I always try to remember what it was that I loved about words and about lyrics. And I always say on stage, not always, I sometimes say on stage when I played the title cut off my first CD, when I went back and started recording CDs, that it's the only folk song ever written inspired by a poem by Thomas Hardy. And people don't know what I'm talking about, and then when I say you may remember Thomas Hardy for the feel-good summer reading books like Tessa the D'Urbervilles and Jude the Obscure and all these incredibly depressing Victorian novels.
Right.
But he fancied himself a poet, and even though no one knows him as a poet. And when I first went to college, I was an English major, which probably won't surprise you at this point. And I read one of his poems, and there was a line in it that said, "Time parts steals, lets parts abide." And it just hit me. And I said, that's really true, because normally all you ever hear is the opposite. Time heals all wounds, or time does this, time does that. So this is one of my favorite songs, and I frequently close with it because I like leaving people with something to think about.
Yeah, good man.
But it does also, I think, play into what we were talking about earlier, about just creating a shell. It's hard for me to believe most people can't relate to the idea of looking back on their life and thinking about different moments in their life where things, as they say, danced on the head of a pin, where the coin could have dropped this way or that way. And
True.
And it's just human nature to reflect on things like that. So anyway, this is, it's called Time Leaves Things Behind, which is my sort of adaptation of his line. Well, I can almost hear your voice when a whisper rides the wind. Words from long ago, they drift like falling snow, and I almost hear your voice. I can sometimes see your eyes when a stranger looks my way, but it turns out to be your shadow chasing me. But I sometimes see your eyes, just like a thief who comes through a window and takes all he can find. makes off with your memories. But time leaves things behind. And time leaves things behind. I can feel you by my side. In the stillness of the night, the long arm of the moon reaches across the room, and I'd feel you by my side. Just like a thief comes through a window and takes all he can find. Time makes off with your memories, but time leaves things behind. And time leaves things behind. Do you wonder where I am? And do you wonder where you'd be if some forgotten day things had gone another way? Do you wonder where you'd be? Just like a thief comes through a window and takes all he can find. And time makes off with your memories, but time leaves things behind. Yeah, time leaves things behind. Time leaves things behind.
Thank you. And I tell you, Ray, I sometimes you forget how a song can pull you into your own memories, and about your brokenness and how even though things were broken at certain period of times in your life, how we came together, maybe for the better, So thank you for sharing that. It was really kind of cool.
I wrote him a thank you note when I saw it posted. A DJ in Atlanta, Georgia, because I've recorded that song. It was actually the title cut of my first CD, which I think I mentioned. But anyway, I noticed in one of his Spinatron postings that a DJ in Atlanta played that song on the anniversary of his wife's passing.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, I think I probably cried about when I saw that. But so I wrote him a nice handwritten note saying how much it meant to me that he it's that moment in his life he thought of that song, and that's exactly what you dream of. Well, you don't dream, but in terms of being able to reach someone and give them voice in a moment like that, that's
precious.
To me, that's as good as a gold record, that one moment.
Yeah, when I've spoken to artists, and sometimes hearing, "Hey, that was great," is nice. But when somebody comes up to you and relates, hey, that touched me in this way, or you made me cry, or you made me mad, whatever it is, that's a big compliment. That's saying you pulled at some heartstrings, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Ray, let's do this. Let's just take a quick break, and
Sure.
We'll be right back after the break. Hang with us, everybody.
Are you ready for the ultimate podcasting adventure? The Long Island Sound podcast offers you not one, but 2 ways to engage with our captivating content. Tune in to our audio podcast on your favorite platform and let your imagination paint vivid pictures of Long Island stories. Or if you're craving a visual feast, catch our video podcast on Spotify and on the Long Island Sound YouTube channel. Double the options, double the excitement.
Marshall Crenshaw, Pure Prairie League. I saw them at the Calderon. Remember the Calderon in Huntington? Steve Forbett. I'm a big fan of his. He played here recently at the Argyle Theater.
I've done 2 shows with him recently. And,
have you? Yeah.
Yeah, and and the first show was really a nice night, and then I was shocked when the second show, which was probably about 6 months later, he was like so happy to see me, and he was like so friendly, and so glad I was doing the show with him again, and it was just a great experience. I'm a big fan too. There's a case in point that Alive on Arrival, when that album came out in I guess 1979 or so.
Yeah. Yep.
That album, was transformative to me as well, because it kind of just dropped right into, where I thought I was alone in the world, like trying to write like this, like all this acoustic stuff with a little bit of contemporary feel to it. And then this album comes out that the other person that's like that is Lucinda Williams. She puts out these records. It's exactly what I want to do, and she gets away with it, which is great.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. A friend of a friend is backing her up. After she wrote her book and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I'm on. If you know her, call her. I'd love to interview her. She followed me on Instagram. I was just like,
that's a riot.
It's like, who the hell am I? I'm the schmuck from Babylon with dusty guitars. And as my wife said to me, you don't play guitar enough. What's wrong with you? I said, I just don't have the time. You have time to look at your iPad, don't you? I'm like, okay. A spouse is someone who tells you what you need to say, not always what you need to hear, not always what you want to hear. So thank you, honey. Yes, I'll pick up the guitar. Again, and it's funny, you talked about when Forbert's album came out, like 1979 or thereabouts. That was, so for me, there were a lot of bands in every bar you went to. It seemed on Long Island, Neptunes, and all these places.
Yep.
Then disco kind of came in, and DJs, and it just killed it. And I can imagine you being a songwriter going, nobody wants to hear my stuff anymore. I don't know, right?
No, I remember. I know exactly what you're talking about. You're 100% right. That's exactly what happened, and that I lived it.
But you kept going. That's the difference. You kept going, which is great.
Well, I had 2 groups of people that were very supportive of my writing original material. And they were only a few hundred feet away from each other. I don't know if you remember the old Fern's Harness Shop on Bryan Avenue in Roslyn. Fern's, it was like a small wine and cheese place.
Uh-huh.
Well, Eddie, Billy, and Anita Long were very supportive of my efforts to write songs and perform, and they gave me a lot of work and a lot of opportunities. And the legendary Epi, Michael Epi Epstein, from my father's place, he was supportive of a lot of, for all the rock acts that started there. People don't realize Epi supported people like Richie Havens, Aztec Two-Step early on. And people that have never forgotten it are still friends with him to this day. And me, like I'm just a local guy. And he gave me a lot of those opening act opportunities.
Nice.
I played a lot of colleges as well. I always ask people where they went to school, because if they went to school in New York State, I'm almost positive I played at their college at one point. And I don't care where it is in New York State. And I did a show. One of the highlights of my opening up for people, if you want to talk about that, was
Please.
I opened up for Dave Van Ronk in 1973, I guess. I was probably about would have been like 19 years old.
Wow.
And it was 2 sets, an early show and a late show. And after the early show, he asked me to play with him on the late show.
Really?
And it's not that easy to play when you're like floating on air, but I somehow managed to do it. And
you know what? You took the question out of my mouth, because I'm always curious about the dynamic between an opening act and the starring act per se. And is it just 2 ships playing? You did your thing, I'm doing my thing, and that's wow, that's amazing.
It can go. I've never had a bad experience. Really, at worst case scenario is that they're polite, and I've never had a bad experience.
Oh, great.
The only other magic moment that I ended up doing 4 shows with the reconstituted Mamas and the Papas, which was Michelle Phillips being played by Mackenzie Phillips, and Spanky McFarlane playing Mama Cass, and both John Phillips and Denny Doherty were still alive. So they were amazing shows, by the way. Some people said they sounded better than the original 4 singers. But anyway, I got to, doing 4 shows, you got to be pretty friendly.
Yeah.
And before the last show, I'll never forget this. Again, I was probably in my maybe 20 years old, maybe 22 years old the most. John Phillips says to me, "Hey, you feel like taking a walk up to the bar?" I go, I'm looking around like, who's he talking to? You talking to me? Sure. So I walked up to the bar with my buddy John Phillips, and the whole time I'm literally walking side by side with, and I'm thinking, he wrote California Dreaming. He wrote, take a couple more steps, he wrote Monday.
Right.
Anyway, that
We're all just people, right? Yeah.
That's right. But I've never had anyone not be nice to me that I can think of.
Wow. Tell me about Dr. John. I'm curious about that.
He was very quiet, surprisingly.
Oh, yeah?
And he's very polite. We didn't really interact very much. That would not be one of my... but he was very, smiley, upbeat, and positive. But he was very surprisingly quiet. And, he talked exactly like you'd think he'd talk. And, like, what did you say? It's like...
It's like when I've traveled in the South, it took me a good day to kind of acclimate my ears to the cadence of speak. You've got the show, the Gordon Lightfoot show at the Long Island Museum in Stony Brook coming up, and we're going. So I'll get to see you again. I'm very looking forward to that. And Mary Lamont's going to be there, and a bunch of people that
Gene Casey is going to be
Gene
there.
Casey. Gene Casey was great. What a nice guy.
Oh, yeah, he's the best.
And the funny thing is, so a lot of people I've interviewed, I don't meet them until afterwards or weeks later. I didn't realize Gene was like 6'7".
Yeah.
And I went, "Hi, Gene." I'm like, "Oh my God." And as big a heart as he is tall, I would say that. And he introduced me to Nancy Atlas, and I was I was I went to see them out in Sag Harbor in the theater out there, and he was like, "Have you met her?" I'm like, no. He's like, come here. He takes me backstage, and it went from there. It was really, really nice. And I keep on saying this to everybody. How do you get you guys? I said, you know what? The music community here on Long Island, people are so special and so warm, at least to me, that it's introductions and a little bit of persistence on my side, but it'll happen when it happens, you know. So it's pretty good. So, hey, before we go, do you have another song you can play for us as we wind down this episode?
Sure. I was thinking as we were talking about this song, I think I played this song in front of, I did a show with Eric Anderson recently.
Oh, okay.
And people came up to me afterwards and told me how much they were moved by it, and it only surprised me because it's a song about that revolves around baseball. But
okay.
Like all stories, there's a very, very human component to it. And again, talking about how songs come out of nowhere, I was at a baseball game, and my friend Bernie sitting next to me, and after a strikeout, they started, throwing the ball around the infield.
Uh-huh.
And my friend Bernie goes, why, when they throw the ball around like that, did they not throw it to the first baseman? They, goes right to the second baseman. What's wrong with the first baseman?
Yeah.
And I said, Bertie, I have no idea. And I looked it up, and the story of where that tradition eventually started. Now, of course, this tradition started like 90 years ago, so
okay.
I'm sure it became over the last 50 years or so just the way it's always been done.
Right.
But this is the story of how that tradition got started. And I was surprised as anyone when I read this story. And I'm a lifelong Yankee fan. And
how appropriate for spring training.
This is the story of Around the Horn.
All right.
Yankee infield knew the score. The Iron Horse was losing the war. They watched Lou go out and man his post, weak as a lamb, white as a ghost. When strike three, the umpire shouts, and the Yanks begin to throw the ball about. But looking over, they think it might be best to let Lou Gehrig have a moment's rest. First the baseball leaves the catcher's hand, sails to third, but they will skip one man. Short to second, then straight back to the mound. Around the horn is one man down. Around the horn is one man down. And one by one, a new They saw the way the Yanks threw the ball around, and since they love the man and love the game, across the league each team would do the same. First the baseball leaves the catcher's hand, sails to third, but they will skip one man. Short to second, then straight back to the mound. Around the horn is one man down. Around the horn is one man down. And so to this day, in case you wonder why, that man at first, the others still pass by. Well, it's because he's standing where the shadow falls of Lou Gehrig, the greatest of them all. First the baseball leaves the catcher's hand, sails to third, but they will skip one man. Short to second, then straight back to the mound. Around the horn is one man down. Around the horn is one man down.
Wow, I can't think of a better song. Man, that was great. And you said you're a Yankee fan, and I tell you, I got to do a shout out to my friend Bob Murray, who's a big Bob. That's for you, man. Absolutely. That was great, Ray. Thank you so much for.
That'll be on the new record.
Well, oh, I got an exclusive.
You do. It's
wow. That's a great. I'm not just buttering you up here, Ray. That's a great song, man.
Oh,
it's
thanks.
just and you know who would have thought, right? The great Lou Gehrig.
Yeah. It is the stuff that baseball is made of. History, tradition, teammates.
Yeah, and family. I'm thinking about my friend, and his connection with his dad was the Yankees. And he spoke about that at his dad's funeral. And if there's nothing else, we had baseball. Which is
right.
It's just great. And you know what I like what you did is you took what might be some trivial information in a second of, hey, you know why they don't throw it to first, to be a real poignant song in many regards. That's the magic of a singer-songwriter right here on the Long Island Sound.
The thing about it that struck me was that how the other teams picked it up and on their own did it in empathy and sympathy.
Yeah, homage. Right?
For Lou to see that they were doing it too.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
And so it's a lovely story.
When's opening day? Soon, right? April?
March 28th.
March 28th.
It's early this year. Yeah.
Nice. That's great. So now I got to coerce my friend to bring me to his box on Yankee opening day.
There you go. You may want to suggest that some of your baseball friends Google the title cut of my third CD,
okay,
which was the Ballad of Three Finger Brown.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Mordecai Three Finger Brown?
I hate to say it, I'm sports agnostic, so
Yep.
I know it exists, and I know people believe in it.
Mordecai Three Finger Brown.
Okay.
I'll just tell you quickly the backstory. When he was a child, his older brother and his older brother's friends kind of dared him to stick his hand in a farm instrument on the farm, and he did. And so back at the turn of the century, in the early 1900s, it wasn't like there were minor leagues like there are today.
Right.
They were just barnstorming local teams and pick-up semi-pro teams.
Mm-hmm.
And he played third base. And just like in the movies, one day the pitcher didn't show up, and he had to pitch. Not realizing that because he was missing fingers on his hand, that the grip on the ball would make it do crazy things.
Oh, wow.
And he led the Chicago Cubs to what at the time was their last World Series in 1908.
Okay.
But here's the postscript to this story. So the Chicago Cubs, I write this song. It's released in August of 2016.
Okay.
It's the story of Mordecai Three Finger Brown, who led the Chicago Cubs to their last World Series win 108 years ago.
Okay.
2 months later, the Chicago Cubs win the World Series. Coincidence? Probably. Yeah.
It's the magic of music. Take credit. Take credit. Well, Ray, I tell you, I could listen to you all night long, but I got to go to bed eventually.
Okay.
Honestly, I really enjoyed your company. I know people
That's a
listening to
blast.
this episode are going to enjoy it and search out your music and see where you're playing locally. And I'm really looking forward to the Gordon Lightfoot show on the 24th, I think it is. It's a Sunday.
And actually, the only other thing I would mention is that Thursday, March 28th, I'm opening up for John McEwen of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band.
Ooh.
And that's at my father's place in the Roslyn Hotel.
Right.
And that's going to be a lovely night. I'm really looking forward to that because, of course, when Will the Circle Be Unbroken came out, when those records came out, that just, to me, was just so great. Those records were so perfect.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to meeting him and singing some songs in front of him.
That's great. When you can play with your heroes, what's better than that, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Ray, again, I want to thank you for being on the Long Island Sound podcast. I want to have you back. I look forward to meeting you again in person on the 24th. That's Sunday. And you're welcome back anytime to the show.
Likewise, Steve, I had the greatest time. I enjoyed talking with you so much. You just say the word, and anything you need or anything that helps, I'm there.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace.